Hi, I'm Stacey, and you're listening to the Find Yourself After 40 podcast. Hello, fabulous friends over 40. I am Stacey Creeley. Welcome to the Find Yourself After 40 podcast. I'm excited to be your host, and even more so, I am very excited to welcome a very special guest into my studio today. Someone who will be perfect to continue my 40 and Fearless series, focusing on women who have reinvented themselves in midlife. I'd like to welcome Jennifer Arthurton to the studio. Jennifer is not only a woman who reinvented herself in midlife, but now she also has a career built around helping other women reinvent themselves. She is a former Fortune 500 corporate executive turned speaker, podcast host, leadership coach, and she is passionate about advocating for the power of the midlife woman. She is also the founder of a really cool website that I am admiring and loving and following, oldchicksknowshit.com. And I think she's absolutely fantastic and fabulous. So welcome to the studio, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me, Stacey. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So what I would like to do is have Jennifer tell us a little bit about her story. I know I've talked to her before, and she has quite a story of reinvention that I think will be inspiring to any woman who is listening today, who's out there with us thinking, I'm stuck, I don't know where to go next, and maybe it's too late. So Jennifer, can you tell us a little bit about what happened and a little bit about your journey? Give us some background.
I'll start with the beginning of the end, actually, and then we can backtrack a little bit. So in the year leading up to my 50th birthday, I found myself divorced, unemployed, an empty nester, and I was also bedridden with a stress-related illness. And it was as though every identity of who I thought I was in the world, so wife, mother, corporate executive, all of that. And at the time I was like big into fitness as well too, but I was too sick to get out of bed most days. So every identity of who I thought I was literally stripped away from me in what felt like overnight. And the scary part is that when I started really asking myself, okay, if I'm not a wife, mother, and corporate executive, then who am I? And I couldn't answer that question. I did not know because I was so identified with the roles that I played. And I realized that I had spent my entire life going through the process of checking off all the boxes of everything that we're supposed to do, everything that we should do. So, go to school, get good marks, get yourself a good corporate job, work your way up the ladder, have a kid in there, get married, do all the things, right? But never had I ever stopped long enough to really ask myself what I wanted, what was important to me, and was the life that I was living really making me happy? And, I didn't have answers to those questions because I had actually never spent time thinking about it. We're all living busy, busy lives, doing, going, doing all the things for taking care of everybody. But most women, I was kind of last on my to-do list, right?
100%.
And so it was when everything fell apart and I was kind of really forced to come to terms with, okay, who am I and what do I want for my life? It was, I would love to say that it was a very, I had this realization and then I knew it wasn't. It was a painful process of really understanding how I got to where I got to and really understanding that I was the one responsible for where I was in my life. And while that was was a very confronting thing, it was also a very empowering thing because if I had created the life that I had that quite obviously wasn't working for me, right, I could recreate it on my terms, right? I could, make it something that I wanted, and so part of that, coming to terms with it was throwing myself a big old pity party too. Why me? What's wrong with me? Everybody else's life seems to be going along just great. And here I am, with my life in ruins, right? But then it started to dawn on me that okay, I've just turned 50. I have maybe 30 or God willing 40 years or more ahead of me, right? And what am I going to do? Sit around and mope about, my life, right? No, I was I have a whole chapter, the longest chapter of our lives yet in front of me. And I can do with that whatever it is that I please. And so really it was, like I said, a very deep personal development and spiritual journey for me to get to this place where I was like, okay, I have a sense of now who I am and what it is that's important to me. But it wasn't an overnight thing, and it wasn't always easy, I'll say that.
Well, I think that's really inspiring to hear in a way, because I think that so many women are feeling stuck. And even to the woman out there who's listening who, maybe they didn't have quite the things happening in their life like you did. I mean, you had a huge change. You were an empty nester, you lost your job, divorce, everything. But I think there are just some women who are out there, quite honestly, who are like, I'm fine. My job's fine. I love my family. I'm fine. But why do I feel unfulfilled? Why do I feel like there's something more? And if I do, what do I do about it? And I found myself a little bit in that position. I was very happy with my career and I'm very happy with my family, but you do get to a point in midlife, and maybe it's not always as dramatic as what happened to you, but you get to a point where you're like, what else is there?
Yeah.
And I think you bring up such an amazing point when you say that you checked all the boxes, because I know I grew up in a family where my dad was a steel worker, my mom was a homemaker. The goal was to go out and get a good job. The goal was get your college education and get a good job with benefits, And then once you got that good job with benefits, everything else, you check the box, married, kids, all the things. And then I think that it's just so mind blowing that you get to a point where you're just like, yeah, there's got to be something else.
Well, I think a big reason for that is that most of us are living in service of something or someone else, right? Like we're so busy taking care of the kids, building our careers, doing all of the things that we need to do, that we've become disconnected from who we really are. And it's only when we get to this point of like midlife, like starting in our 40s, where we start to be like that disconnection starts to really show up, because this is the chapter of authenticity. Like this is the chapter where we come back to ourselves, right? And so like, when we're getting into our 40s, it's usually like your career's on autopilot, your relationship's been around for a while, the kids need you less, right? So you start to see kind of gaps in space, right? And then you start questioning, well, what am I going to do with myself? And I remember for me, like probably a good 5 years before my my career ended, I remember I would find myself in a boardroom, half listening to a meeting and looking around the table and thinking, is this it? Is this like what I worked so hard for? Is this what I really even wanted? What's next? And then I would tell that little voice to shut up and sit down, because first of all, I was scared of it. Like I had worked really hard to get to where I was, and I wasn't about to blow it all up, right? And the second thing was I didn't know what to do about it. If it wasn't this, then what? But what I know now, and I see this with all of my clients, is that this questioning that we have is actually right on cue. Because this is the chapter, like I said, where we are really returning to the truth of who we are as people, not as wives, mothers, sisters, employees, but really who we are, like what's in the heart of us. And that questioning is the beginning of us being able to reconnect with that part of ourselves that we've ignored forever, right? Like, we're at the bottom of our to-do lists, most of us. And so it's actually right on schedule, because first of all, we're not supposed to be the same person from the beginning to the end of our lives. We're just simply not. And usually that questioning comes is because there's some other parts of you that are calling to you, that are looking for attention. Right? But normally we're so busy doing that we can't even hear what's happening. But now all of a sudden the voice is a bit louder. Now it's like really questioning you. It's like tapping you on the shoulder. And our job is to start listening to that and to start tuning into that and let that be the guide to where it is that we go next. Because it's turning our focus away from everything outside of us, like what we do for the kids, our ability to have babies, is our body physically pleasing to somebody outside of us, like all of that kind of stuff. It's about turning our attention away from all of that and turning our attention to what's happening inside, because that's where the gold is. That's where we find our gifts.
That is so powerful, and it resonates with me so much right now. I can't even tell you. And I'm sure it's resonating with so many other women who are hitting that point in midlife. And I love that you say that we're right on cue, because you do get to a point where you're like, what's wrong with me? I have the house with the white picket fence. I have the beautiful new kitchen. I have the beautiful daughter. I have a good job. And you almost, at least in my case, I almost felt guilty. Why am I not what's wrong with me? I should be grateful. And I am. But like you said, there's something just tapping on your shoulder. Hey, remember me? You liked to write when you were young. You like fashion. And those were kind of the things that were awakening in me. So can you kind of tell us when you came to the realization that, okay, you had 30 or 40 more years ahead of you,
Hmm.
how did you find out what was next? What process? Take me through that process a little bit.
Yeah. I just want to say before I get into that, like that thing that you just said where it's like I should be grateful because I have, a perfect house and kids and family and all of that kind of stuff. I think every single solitary woman that I have talked to has that exact same experience, and it was exactly mine as well too. Because we have all of this great stuff, but yet we can't ignore this thing that's happening inside. So the process for me looked, well, so first of all, the process for me was a slow one, right? I have since learned a lot, which is how I teach my clients now that we can make this a whole lot closer, but quicker. But it really was a process of going inside, like I said, right? Like listening, tuning into that little inner voice that was within me, and then trusting that and taking small steps towards it. So, for example, for me, I was kind of forced into a place of surrender. Like there was literally nothing I could do, right? Like this was my life. There was nothing I could do. And so, I made a decision to just like to start paying attention to what was happening inside me. Like, we all have that little nudge. We all have that intuition beneath the surface. And for most of us, we ignore it or we hear it and we don't trust it, right? Like, is that really the
Right.
answer, right? We have to start spending time with ourselves and building that relationship with what's happening inside of us because and I know this isn't everybody wants here's the three things that you do, the three-step answer, like here's the three
Right.
things that you do. If there's one thing that I would highly recommend is like carving out time for yourself in every single solitary day to just be with you. No phone, no book, no TV, no nothing. It can be you with your cup of coffee first thing in the morning, before the rest of the house gets up, or going for a walk or something, whatever it is, just you and you. And then asking yourself questions like, how am I today? What's important to me? Like, what do I need more of today? What do I need less of? How would I like this day to go? And you start asking yourselves those questions so that you can start hearing your own voice, right? Like, there's so much happening around us all the time. I think I saw a stat that said we take in the equivalent of 2 full-length feature films worth of information like every single solitary day that we're awake. So that's only half the day. Like that's how much information is coming at us all the time, and it's drowning out what we know to be true, right? And so you could ask yourself even, what do I know to be true today? Right? And then just write that down. Like I encourage everybody to get a journal and just write down the thoughts that are coming up, right? Write down the questions that you have, the things that you're angry about, the things that you're happy about, like whatever it is, and start journaling on those. Because in building that connection with yourself and building that connection with your intuitive voice, you start to hear things. You're like, oh, I really like this. So I, for example, was called to write. And I was like, well, what am I going to write about? I'm not a writer. I'm just not a writer, right? And then, it was like, well, I heard like, well, write about your own journey. So I was like, okay, just started writing about it. And actually it was great, right? I was like, this actually feels really good. And then the next thing was, you should publish that somewhere. And then I was like, pardon, what? I'm not doing that, right? That I remember the first time I published the first blog post, which is how Old Chicks Know Shit started, was a blog. That very first blog post, I had to sit on my hands for 3 days to not go back and delete it because I felt so exposed. But I just sat with it and sat with it. And then what happened, what I didn't expect to happen, was that people read my blog. Like I didn't know what was happening. I published, I think it was on Instagram. Yeah, I think it was on Instagram. Or maybe it was on a website. I can't remember. But people started reading it. And then women started reaching out to me and saying, oh yeah, me too. I had that same thought. I have that same feeling. Right. And then
Wow.
I was like, oh, this is interesting. I thought this was a me problem that I was experiencing. And when I realized it was actually a we thing, that we were all in this same place. Right. And then, I started looking around for, okay, where are all these women who have reinvented their lives? Like, show me what's possible, right? Like, I need to see examples of this. And, when I started searching around, like in mainstream media, you just don't see it, right? Like,
Right.
because if you see a woman over 40 in any mainstream media, she's talking about, meal replacement shakes, bladder leakage protection, like whatever, right? Like, retirement plans, all very well good and necessary, but like really reflect a tiny, tiny portion of this time of our lives. So when I started searching and finding these women with incredible stories, I decided to share them because it was the inspiration that I needed. And I knew that if I needed it, then there were other women who needed it too. Right. And then it, went from the blog to the podcast to people reaching out to me and, like building the community of women just to have these conversations. Right. Which then led to the mastermind group and the coaching work that I do now. But it really was a process of being driven from the inside out. Like, what am I passionate about? And, when my life fell apart, when I was thinking about rebuilding my life, the only thing that I knew and that I kept focusing on was I want to be passionate about whatever it is that I do. Like, I want that to be the driving force.
I love that so much.
Yeah, but I think, it's not a quick fix by any stretch of the imagination, nor should it be, right? Because it is a process of becoming. And in that becoming is where we start finding our gifts. It's like where we start reaching for the things that are really aligned with who we are at our truest core, right? Like where we start seeing opportunities for things that need to be better in the world, then we're like, I'm passionate about fixing that thing. And then that becomes the thing that we're like, I could actually turn that into a business, or that's a new career for me.
And I also think, if I can interject,
Yeah.
part of it too is coming back to your roots in a way, because I know for me, I have wanted to start a blog for years. And in fact, I did try to sort of kind of start one when my daughter was born, and it was more of a mommy blog focused thing. And it just simply didn't last because trying to work a full-time job, have a 6-month old, and keep up with a blog is, I mean, I know women do it and more power to them, but that just didn't happen. And, thinking back even further, when I was in college, I was always on, the tower staff. It was like our school newspaper or whatever. So I think as your career evolves, as your life evolves, and like you said, you're busy, 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 you go into autopilot, you're checking all the boxes, and those passions that you had, or that you started out with, they get buried somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's exactly what happened to me. And it really resonated with me when you said that you sat on that blog post, because the very first time I published a blog post, it was about finding yourself after 40. And I was so nervous. I was so nervous
It's nerve-wracking.
because it is. And I think for women over 40, especially, that one thing that keeps so many women stuck is they are so worried about, what does everybody think?
Yeah, 100%.
What does everybody think? And I finally, in my 40s, I was kind of like, I don't care what everybody else thinks. Like, I really don't care. I want to publish this blog post. And if they like it, great. And if they don't have to read it. And it certainly is a slow process in building my community of women. But I had that calling that you're talking about. And part of it is from the inside out. But a lot of it is simply going back to where you started, that buried so long ago with all this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I often say to people, like, what was that thing that you dreamt about as a child, right? Like, or when you used to play like games with your friends, like, what were you doing? Like, what was the make believe thing, right? And then to go back to that, because like so many of us, like as kids, we naturally have this like innate ability, like to just like imagine scenarios and play them out and stuff like that. And then, as we go on, people say, oh, stop daydreaming and get back to work. And then as we become adults, we completely lose the ability to be able to dream. But like, if you go back to those childhood dreams or those childhood games, there's so many clues there about who you are, because that was before the world got a hold of you and told you who you should be, right? So that was you, the true you. And so if there's a passion that you had then, start playing with that. Like, just allow it a little bit of space in your brain, because what happens is like, we have this thing. It was like, well, when I was a kid, I loved to be a writer. I used to play news reporter, let's say, for example, right? And then we think about it now, and within the same second that we think about the thing, we layer on 15 reasons why that's not possible now. And then we squash that dream before it's even had a chance to take hold. So, I encourage people to spend time daydreaming. Like, just ask yourself, what if it was possible? Right? Like, or what if, or, just like allow yourself a few seconds to picture yourself in that role, and just keep playing with it in your head. Like, don't squash it. Give it space to breathe. I even encourage like writing it down. Like your journal is a great place to get stuff out of your head, like to give it a place to live that's not inside your head, because our minds are super busy doing all the combinations of permutations of things that we need to do in our lives. But when we allow ourselves to play with that dream, to play with that what if, we just give it a little bit of space to breathe, and then it grows a little bit, right? And then we come back to it and we play with it again a little bit more, like what if, right? I am a huge, huge proponent of visualization, right? Like visualizing the thing that it is that you want, like you're already there, like you're already in it and living it with as much detail as possible. Because our subconscious mind does not know the difference between real and imagined, right? Like if you picture it, your subconscious thinks, we've already done that. So when you go to take steps towards it, your brain is less likely to freak out and try and hold you back, because in your brain, they're like, oh, everybody stand down. It's okay. No need to freak out. She's already done this before, right? Because you've already lived it in your mind. So taking things from like the seed of an idea to what just might be possible can happen through visualization. So that's why I say just give yourself time to play with these like little dreams or things that pop up, in your brain that you're like, I really wish I had of, or you know what, I should have done that when I was younger. Take the age thing out of it and just like allow yourself to play with it a little bit in your brain. Daydream about it.
That's so great. That is so great. And I really think that your visualization idea is so key. One of the things that I have tried to do is not only, try to visualize where I want to be, but also write those things down, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And and I have a little notebook, and I keep ideas no matter how crazy they are. And I'll
Yeah,
say,
that's
oh,
brilliant.
that's a great blog post idea. And sometimes it comes up in the oddest places, just a conversation, for example, that I have with someone. And I'll give you an example of this. So recently, a very close friend of mine who, I mean, we've been friends since childhood, but we don't see each other all the time. We run into each other every Sunday at the grocery store. Okay. Every Sunday we run into it. So finally there's a Starbucks at my local grocery store. I said, we got to stop doing this. How about, since we both grocery shop on Sunday, we pick a Sunday and we like sit down and have coffee first, catch up a little bit, and then do our grocery shop. And she said, okay, let's pick a Sunday and do that. So fast forward to the following week. Following week, I text her Sunday morning before my workout class, because I'm workout Saturday and Sunday morning. And I said, hey, I'm going to be at the grocery store around 10 o'clock. That's when my workout class is done. You want to meet for a coffee? Her response blew my mind. She said, I would love that so much, darling, but I'm not on a time schedule this morning. I want a lazy Sunday morning. That small text blew my mind, only because I wasn't offended by it. I just never would have fathomed to have a lazy Sunday morning and not be on a time frame, because I'm just not wired that way. And so that small conversation for me sparked an idea, and I hurry up and I wrote that down. I was like, I need to write about, slowing down and not having a time frame sometimes.
Yeah.
So I just think that's a great thing. I mean, I guess I digressed a little bit, but certainly visualization, writing things down, and just turning to your advice. So what advice would you give to that woman who's out there who maybe she does have an idea, maybe she doesn't, maybe she's feeling a little stuck and she has that full-time career, she's got the house and the dog and the kids. What advice would you give to her when she's looking ahead and saying, what next? How do you even begin?
Yeah. So the first step is what we just talked about. First of all, is just to slow down for a minute, like to stop the like go, 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 do, because we all get into that trap and then we're just on the treadmill, right? Like running, is to carve out pockets of time, like whatever is available to you, whether it's 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is, and just like sit down. Just like sit down, got a cup of tea, a cup of coffee. You could meditate if you like. You could just stare at the tree outside your house. Is literally just to sit down and stop moving for a minute, right? And just connect back in. Like you can connect with your breath. Like I said, you can meditate, you can journal, like whatever it is. But you have to get connected to what's happening inside first, right? And the second thing I would say is like we all have ideas, these like little dreams and little thoughts that we immediately take out of the the realm of possibility by putting all of these excuses on it. I want you to check your stories. Like, what are the stories you're telling yourself about what's possible, right? So, it could be, I don't have time. I'm not smart enough. Well, so and so's already done that. Check the stories, because 99.9% of the stories that we tell ourselves are, in fact, lies. Like, they're just not true. It's our brain trying to protect us from, stepping out into the unknown. The human brain does not like the unknown. It likes certainty and predictability. So when you step off your path, your brain is going to freak out, right?
Right.
So check your stories about what you're telling yourself is possible. Because I guarantee for every story that a client comes to me with, I can prove to them in more than 5 different ways why that is not the truth. And usually the stories are like, I'm not enough, I'm not smart enough, I don't have time, like those types of things, right? And if you really want to, like, the fact that, first of all, our dreams and desires are not random. They are parts of us wanting to be expressed. And you have everything that you need. By sheer fact that you have that dream or that desire means that you have everything you need to bring that thing to life. If you didn't, you would not have that dream or desire.
I love
like
that.
That's the first thing to notice. And the other part is like, well, create a visualization practice. Like, you can do that. Like, that's another great way to kind of put yourself in the place where you want to be and just try it on for size, right? And then take the tiniest possible step that you can think of in the direction that you would like to go, right? So it could be reaching out to somebody who knows something about that thing. It could be ordering a book, researching something, like whatever it is. Just take a tiny action step in that direction, because what happens is when we realize that when we visualize the thing in our subconscious mind, and then we actually take an action step out of that, after that, we've anchored that in as a real possibility, right? Like, it's no longer this fleeting thing that can go away. It's actually now beginning to form in real life.
I love that because it seems so manageable. I love that you're saying you don't have to blow up your life and make a
No.
change overnight, that you can just take small steps. And I think the biggest lie we tell ourselves as women over 40, and you said it, is that we don't have the time. We don't have the time. And one of the things that I've started to do, and I'm not going to lie, I struggle. I am not a morning person. I don't like getting up early. I have to because of my job. I work in a school system, but I don't like getting up any earlier than I have to, put it that way. But what I have been doing is I've been getting up an hour earlier. And I have a whole morning routine. I make my little lemon water and I turn on my meditation music. And that's my time to either write on my blog or to work on my website or look up amazing guests to be on my podcast that I started. It's how I found you because I was looking for women who have reinvented themselves over 40 and what bloggers are out there over 40. So that small chunk of time, and I mean, it's small. Some mornings it's a half an hour, some morning it's an hour, and some mornings it's only 25 minutes. But just that small chunk of time, I've been able to make so much progress. It's taken me several years, and I'm still in the process of evolving and developing and building. But I really think that's true, that's just a huge lie. If it's a priority, you make time for it.
Yeah. And the thing is, I don't know if you've ever read the book Atomic Habits, where, he talks about taking tiny steps towards your goal, right? Like, when you look back, consistent tiny steps will get you farther than one big leap where you take a big leap and then you're paralyzed because you don't know what to do next. Those tiny little steps over time, like, you'll look back and you'll be like, oh my goodness, look how far I've come. And it will feel like literally nothing because, like you said, it was 20 minutes here or there. It was like a half an hour. It was an hour, right? And like, nobody should blow up their lives. Not many of us are in a position where we can just afford to drop everything and focus
Right.
100% on that. Like, that's not real life.
Right.
But when something is important to us and we start putting a little bit of focus, like from an energetic standpoint, you're like getting the ball rolling, right? Like, because once the thing is in momentum, right? And then you're taking that next little step and then that next little step, like, it starts to create its own momentum, right? And it starts pulling you forward.
And I think the other thing to consider, as many of my friends I know, we're not only women over 40, but we're mothers over 40. And I know that I want to show my daughter that you can do whatever you put your mind to if you take consistent steps, like you said. And if you continue growing and developing, and at any age, at any age.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a great example that we can set for the young women in our life too, because too often the focus is on exactly what you said before, what we look like, what our size is. And I definitely am a person who wants to be healthy and look good and
Yeah, absolutely.
eat and all the things, but there's so much more after 40, right? And I feel like we have so much more to bring to the table. I guess just to wrap up, can you tell us a little bit about your podcast and your website? Because I definitely want my community of women to follow, like, do all the things, because I think that your website is so inspiring. I've been all through it and reading it and listening, and there's just so much good stuff there.
Yeah. So you can find me on all of the social channels at oldchicksnoshit.com. So that's KNOW. And it really is about the whole reason for that name is really about reminding ourselves that, excuse me, that we are not our faces, our bodies, our graying hair, or any of that kind of stuff. We are what we know inside. That's the value. And I think, to the point that you just made, every woman should do whatever it is she wants to do that makes her feel good about herself, whether that's plastic surgery or not plastic surgery, fitness, like whatever it is. But if our sole focus becomes what's happening on the outside, we are missing a huge opportunity of what's happening inside. And that's what's important. That's what we're bringing to the table in this chapter. So I talk all about that on Instagram, on Facebook, on my website. And it really is, my work really is about opening up the doors of possibility for women to be able to see what I call their kick-ass next chapter, like that thing that's going to light them up from the inside, that soul calling that they've always had, that they can bring that to reality. Because the truth is, we are far more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. Like, we get to choose our next adventure. And if we choose it, if we're feeling called towards it, it is 100% possible that it can happen. And we need to lean into that belief in order for us to get there.
With that, I'm going to thank Jennifer for joining our studio. And thank you so much, oldchicksnoshit.com. Make sure you like it, follow it, and I'm sure we will hear more from Jennifer here on my podcast in the future. At least I hope so. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you for listening to the Find Yourself After 40 podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Creeley. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, like, and share. And remember to follow me on social media at Find Yourself After 40 and on my website, findyourselfafter40.com.